Good evening, everybody. Bishop Lisa Weah here. It is Wednesday night, which means it's time for Pastor's Power Session. So go get Lottie Dottie. Everybody hit like, hit share it to your page. We are not on the NBBC page tonight, Facebook. Um, Bless their hearts, they're acting funny, but we will be back. But make sure you direct them to Lisa Weah or Lisa Weah Ministries tonight, because we're going to have an incredible conversation. I have two women of power on with us tonight, and we're going to have a very, very serious conversation, actually. At the end here of our NBBC Women's Month, our Women's Day is Sunday. And so we will be online at 9 a.m. and we will be in person at noon. So excited. We have two brothers ministering for Women's Day for us this year. Pastor Brent Brown at 9 a.m. and Pastor Antonio Matthews will be on campus at noon with us in person. But wanted to spend some time on this Wednesday engaging in some dialogue that merges together really our Women's Month as well as this Mental Health Awareness Month. Many have been discussing several serious things that have gone on in the world and have really taken over the media in the past few weeks. And we're going to pray, and then we're going to dive into our conversation. So, Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you for keeping us throughout the day, and thank you for bringing us into this virtual space, Lord, where we might dialogue with one another, where we might indeed encourage, strengthen, where we might learn together on tonight, that we might live as stronger and better women, and particularly Black women in your kingdom. Father, we thank you for the strength of our mothers and our grandmothers. And Lord, we thank you for the wisdom that shall be shared even in this time and passed on to our daughters and granddaughters. Lord, bind us together in Christian unity and love. Have your way now. In Jesus' name we pray and we say amen. So
Amen.
I want to first of all thank our own NBBC. Y'all know Tracy Allen. She is our licensed, certified social worker clinical. Did I get that right? I got all the letters straight. And she did a wonderful presentation for us at our Women's Month brunch on Sunday. She's going to talk some more with us tonight. And I'm so delighted to have my friend, my sister, who has a powerful ministry she's going to tell us about in just a minute. The ministry is called Phoenix Ministries. Sister Angela Wharton, who I met many years ago at the Empowerment Temple AME Church back when my brother, Dr. Jamal Harrison Bryant, was there. And, she's still there serving faithfully, and we bless God for her and the ministry God has given her. Now, we all saw the video release of Sean Diddy Combs, whose music, any of us who've had any ears in hip hop, we've heard his music for decades. Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls, the big East-West battle, and Biggie being with Bad Boy and Tupac being with Death Row and Suge Knight, and all of the rumors that surrounded his activities with that. Rumors that have gone on for years and years and years, which have led up to where we now are with the raids on his home, and most recently, the ex-girlfriend Cassie. I wasn't even familiar with Cassie's music or anything, but I saw this video. I saw the video. I saw his apology, and it's very troubling. And the world has been discussing it, but there's been very little talk in the church. Now, we know that things that are going on in the world are also going on amongst Christians. And we are very silent in speaking about things. We have a lot of our sisters who are presently going through domestic situations. Many of us have been in domestic situations. Um, Sister Angela has a powerful ministry she's going to talk about in a minute. And I just want her to, after she talks about her ministry and how she started, Angela, if you would just, kind of speak to what we're seeing and why it's so important for us as Black Christian women to be aware of what's going on and know what to do.
Yes. So first, Bishop, thank you so much for inviting me onto your platform and speaking about this very, very important topic that oftentimes folks don't want to talk about because it's considered taboo, especially in the church. And so just briefly, a little bit about my story. So I am a survivor of rape and sexual assault. There's a difference. Rape actually includes penetration. Sexual assault is any unconsensual sexual contact. And it happens so often. And so for me, I was age 14 when I was sexually assaulted, and then age 24 where I was raped in the woods at gunpoint right here in Baltimore City. And so from the 24-year-old experience, I asked God, you allowed me to survive. What do you want me to do with this, God? There's something that you need me to do with this. And that's when God gave me the vision through prayer about starting a ministry, Phoenix Ministries. And I said to God, no. How many of us have told God no, that we're not doing, like, because we know God, and God does nothing small. Everything he does is huge, right? And so I told him no. But God said yes. And so after 15 years of running from my call to start the ministry, I said yes. And we started the ministry for women sexual assault survivors in the Empowerment Temple. And we had been doing it there for 8 years. We started there in 2012. And so we had been serving women survivors of sexual violence inside of the church and beyond the walls of the church, all over the city of Baltimore and actually the DMV area. And so it's interesting that I did visit a few churches. I sent letters to a few churches back in 2012 when we were starting, because I wanted to give pastors a blueprint, first ladies, women's ministries, a blueprint on how to have a ministry like this in their churches. But interestingly enough, I got turned away. I got turned away, and wow. I couldn't understand it. But I dare say that oftentimes it's because some of our church leaders are actually perpetrators.
Wow.
They're actually perpetrators. And so that's one of the reasons why. Another reason why is because nobody wants to touch it. Nobody wants to address it because people are afraid. Mm-hmm. People don't know where to start. They don't know what to say. And it's a very heavy subject to talk about.
Yeah.
And so fast forwarding until to today, I've seen part of the video. I didn't watch a lot of it because I didn't want to be triggered, because sexual assault and domestic violence are like cousins.
Yeah.
You know, they run hand in hand. And so I didn't want to be triggered myself, but I have watched maybe 3 seconds of it. And people need to understand that it does not matter if it's a celebrity or not.
Right.
Nobody has the right to domestically violate or sexually assault any woman. And the fact that Diddy is a celebrity really had people giving him a pass, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was a celebrity. And we have a huge culture of victim blaming in society all over the world. It's
Yeah.
always our fault. Why couldn't it be him? You know, because he felt like he had lots of money and that he could buy his way out of this. But we know that what's done in the dark, God will always bring it to light. And that's where we are now. And I just want to address one more thing. Oftentimes I like reading comments and hearing discussions at the in the lunchroom and in the hair salon and different places. People are asking, why did it take her so long? Why didn't she say anything back then?
That's what
She
they're
should have
asking.
she
Mm-hmm.
should have said something before. Why wait till now? But see, here's the thing. And Tracy, jump in because you are the clinician here. Oftentimes we're threatened. The fact that he's a celebrity and the survivor will think nobody will believe me. He's got power, he's got money, he's got prestige. The same thing with Bill Cosby, the same thing with Weinstein, and also we're trying to process it. The sexual trauma, the domestic violence trauma, it affects everyone differently. And it actually affects our brain. It changes our brain. So you don't even think about things the same way anymore. And so some people take a longer time to get to a place of healing where they're ready to share. People sometimes get to the point where they're just saying to themselves, enough is enough. I'm ready to stand in my power. I'm ready to speak up. And they speak. And when one person speaks up, it gives others the courage to speak up as well. This is why when you hear one person say something, then more people will start speaking up. There's power in numbers. More people will start to speak up and say, well, this was me too, which is how the whole Me Too movement
Mm-hmm.
got started as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are a number of reasons why people don't speak up right during that time, right in that moment.
So let me go back to the why didn't she go? Why didn't she leave?
Mm-hmm.
Why did she stay with him? When we see her running for her life in this video, like literally running out of the room, we don't know what she left behind. It was clearly a, running for my life moment. He
Yes.
catches her, and what they're saying is that he had already given her a black eye in the room. We see her thrown to the floor and kicked like she's, a piece of trash. Um, the fear of being found and dragged back, the fear of something worse happening to you, the fear of if you speak up and you've been threatened that, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that or I'm going to do this or that to your family. You run into that a lot when you're ministering to women who've been victims.
Absolutely. They stay because that's one of the number one questions we get. Why did she stay? She why did or if she leaves, why did she come back? She was already out. Why did she come back? But again, there's a number of reasons why. It could be that the fear. The fear is the number one reason why people stay. Another reason is because they are threatened. I'll kill the kids if you leave me. I'll kill you if you leave me. Financial reasons. He makes all the money. He has all the money. I have nothing. How am I going to survive? What am I going to do? And so there's so many reasons why survivors stay. But again, they get to the point, and so it takes some longer than others. They get to a point where they cannot stay. They cannot take it any longer. And then they get the power to leave.
So, how's this happening to Christians? Like when we think, oh, we're saved, sealed, sanctified, blood washed, we are the set apart of God, that's happening because that's the hip hop world, they're in the world and we're in church, we're in Christ. How do we reconcile this contradiction?
Well, firstly, it doesn't matter where you are, what socioeconomic status you're in, race, religion, whatever. It does not matter where you are. People, it kind of sneaks up on you. It's subtle, and oftentimes people don't want to recognize the red flags, right? There's always red flags, always. And oftentimes they're brushed off, right? They'll say, look, he'll start with, let me see your phone, going through her phone, or he'll start to, or he or she will want to monopolize their time. They isolate them, right? They want to take them away from their family, from their friends. There is that threat of fear again as well. And I know a number of women, powerful women, pastors, first ladies, ministers, personally, who have been through this situation. And the number one thing they say is, how did I get
here?
How did I get here? I mean, I'm well educated, I'm well traveled, I'm well read, how did this happen? And again, it's those subtle red flags that kind of show up. And then before you know it, you're being beaten. It might start off as like play fighting, or, something as subtle as that. But you have to pay attention to those red flags because they always turn into the real thing. What's that saying? If someone shows you their true colors, or if somebody shows you who they are the first time, believe them. Believe them.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are signs, but we often overlook them because we see what we want to see.
Yes.
Now, then when we go into this, how did I get here? Now we're entering into this self-blame. I should have seen it. I should have done this. I should have done that. Maybe I brought this on myself, and we internalize the victim blaming. So, I was watching a clip came up on my timeline of this one of these young rappers. I'd never heard of her before. So of course I had to go and investigate because I know what the young people are looking at. And she was twerking at a Republican country music concert. And I was reading, I always go straight to the comments. I'm reading the comments, and surprisingly and gratefully, all of our Black women and the men were saying this is not a good look. This is not how we should present ourselves. When we see such images of our sisters, does this feed into the, sexualized image of us as women and contribute to the mindset of, oh, they all want us to do this to them. They want to be treated like this. Does this feed into that? Does this feed the culture of victim blaming?
I would say yes and no. And I first say yes because it's the mindset of the person that's watching her. We have been sexualized and objectified as Black women way back in slavery. So back then, the master and the white man, and they did what they wanted to do with us that they would not do with their wives. And so that's been from years back. And so the person who is watching this and feeling like they can do this, it's, again, it goes back to a whole the mind, their mindset of doing it. Because not everybody, like you say, even in the comments, not everybody who watched felt like some sort of sexual attraction to it. There were a lot of people who said, no, this is not who we are, and this is not okay. So that's why I would say yes and no. No, because there are some people who just don't feed into that. And as a Black woman, I'm on the side of no, this is not who we are. This is not what we do. I know that she is a celebrity. This is like how she's built her brand. But me personally, I do not agree with it. I have daughters, teenage daughters. And as her mom, I could not stand for my daughter doing something like that. And I'm sure she had friends with her that were egging her on, and maybe her manager was egging her on, saying, go ahead and do it. But I don't think that that's something, like, I don't agree with it at all.
This is good. And I really like, let me get this one more in, Tracy, because I know Angela has to get off. But as Christian women,
mm-hmm.
How do we, and you might not have time to answer this one, how do we feel attractive, even sexy?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a line in how we present ourselves, or is it a time and place thing? Is it no, you're a Christian, so you've got to be covered from the rooter to the tutor at all times? Like, how do we find this place of balance so it's clear that we're not presenting ourselves in that manner, but at the same time, we're beautiful women. We don't want to be completely covered up. We want to let our glow shine.
So I can speak from a married woman's perspective.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
because this ties all in with the victim blame. Like, does
mm-hmm.
that mean we should never step out of the house looking too good because we are opening ourselves up to attract the wrong attention?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so from a married woman's perspective, my husband and I have been married for almost 19 years now. And when we have date night, I'm covered, but not completely. Like, I'll have like a little something here going on or something like that, but nothing deep, nothing showing all my goods, none of that. And if you want to wear something that's form-fitting, you can, so long as it's classy and elegant and tasteful. That's the key, that it's tasteful. I believe you can still be sexy and a Christian, right? But have it be classy. Don't have all your stuff out. Like, that's not what we do. And so, to answer the question about sexualizing us or drawing attention to us or giving people the, okay, well, this is what she needs. This is what I'm going to give her, what she needs or what she's asking for. Again, I do not agree with any man, any woman thinking that they can go ahead and sexually assault us by touching us and having their way just because of what I'm wearing or what I look like. That never gives anyone permission to violate you in any way. People should, now this is not always true, but people really should have more control over themselves than to think that it's okay to just have your way with someone. That's not okay. Not at all. And so I'm gonna have to get ready to jump off, but
I know.
Tracy, I know Tracy's been itching to jump in.
Yeah, thank you so much, Angela. We're going to have you back on because I
Yeah.
have like 20 other questions I would love to ask you for everybody. So promise us you'll come back.
Yes, I will. Just let me know when you want me to come back. And because there are some other things that I want to talk about, especially with sexual assault and child molestation, like childhood sexual abuse. Just some pointers and some tips for parents and some other things that I would like to share as well. So
Yes,
thank
because
you
the
for
very fact that you've just shared that you're married after going through all of that sends a powerful healing message to the women. So we have to have you back. Thank you so
yeah.
much. We
Oh,
love
you're welcome.
you.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, Tracy. I know you want to jump in on this conversation.
It's a lot. And I think
That's a
about,
lot to unpack.
I do want to say this. When she does come back, I think it's something that we should do in person,
Mm-hmm.
like
Okay.
comfortable style where we're
Yeah.
all kind of relaxed, not sleepover style, but just comfortable where everybody's like kind of in the floor, sitting on a
Mm-hmm.
mat or something relaxed where we can have like an in-person conversation and invite, other ladies to come so everybody's comfortable. Like
Yeah.
conversations like this don't need to be formal so people can feel comfortable enough to actually talk
Yeah.
and, ask for help if they need it.
That's good. That's what we're gonna do. Yeah.
So the only thing about sexualizing, I feel like that affects the younger generation right now. These teens and young adults, I think they are the ones who become sexualized, and even our young little girls.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that it doesn't even take somebody, for us to dance a certain way or move a certain way for somebody to do that. If you ever look at a little girl in a video on social media and you go
Mm-hmm.
to the comments, the first thing people say is, oh, she's too hot, she's too this, she's too that. We make people or children more
Mm-hmm.
than what they are. We sexualize them. And instead of
Wow.
looking at why, we don't look at why this little girl may be dancing this way. We don't look at what could have happened or what's being encouraged. We blame that child for being that way. So it kind of starts with all of us before an abuser sometimes even steps into play. Have we already, ordained them to be this way or this thing without a fair shot? And I see
Wow.
it in the comments all the time, little girls, and it's like, oh, she's too hot, she's too this baby's 6. Let's talk about why this child
Wow.
is moving like this instead
And
of
she learned
calling them
it.
something.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
good.
so
That's good.
sometimes it's not necessarily what men or women are doing in terms of physical touch. Is what we speak. What are we saying? Like, what are we not? Why aren't we looking at the bigger picture? And I think even through that, sometimes people are speaking from their own trauma.
Wow. Wow. So everything is filtered through our own trauma.
Our own lens, period.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we look at, so you'll see a dad um kiss his son or dad kiss his daughter, and you go in the comments on social media and it's like, oh, that child is too big for that, why is he doing this? Even the guy, I don't know if you saw it, the guy who let the little girls take his hair out,
I
they were
saw the teacher.
there was
Mm-hmm.
nothing sexual about that at all. That
Mm-hmm.
man sat there like, innocently looking at other things, doing other things. Those little
Mm-hmm.
girls' body language wasn't suggestive. You could tell they genuinely cared about that teacher. The
Mm-hmm.
comments, not so much. That's inappropriate, pedophile, this and this, that calling this man all of these things. And I ended up commenting. I said, are we speaking through our own traumatic lenses? Because
Mm-hmm.
some of you all need to go to therapy and work through your stuff because it comes from abuse. It
Yeah.
comes from being assaulted, where you look at things and you skew what it really is for what you've experienced. A lot of people have to focus on healing, so you stop victimizing other people who aren't necessarily victims.
So that leads to another question that I was going to ask. We often find that persons who've been in abusive relationships tend to then get into another abusive relationship
Mm-hmm.
or a string of abusive relationships. Why does this happen?
They're not healed. They haven't identified those triggers. They're kind of blind to the red flags. So it's like I don't see those yet. And especially if they come from a home where I had a client years ago who was chronic domestic violence partnerships. And it wasn't until we had a conversation about her childhood and what she saw her mother experience. And we talked about that. And, you know, she kind of criticized her mother. My mother should have never X, Y, and Z. She should have left then. She should have done that. Those men came in doing blah, 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 blah. And she could name all of the issues that the men had. But, and when she did that, I said, now, of the men you dated, how many of those men had those issues? When she said that, she burst into tears because her light bulb came on then. She had not connected how her past and the things that she experienced in her past and her childhood created, you know, how she viewed relationships. It wasn't until that moment that she had her aha moment where she was like, all of this time, she said, all of this time, all of these years, I never even realized I was doing the same thing my mother was doing. And
Wow.
sometimes it takes that moment, you know, to get help.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like previous generations didn't talk about these things, though. This is not new. What we saw Diddy do is not new. Like we saw this in The Color Purple, which was set a long time ago. We saw that abuse. Why is this generation now at least trying to talk about it, whereas previous generations didn't?
I think social media has a huge help with that because celebrities are making making things less taboo. You know, like Taraji P. Henson has an entire foundation around mental health as it related to the suicide of her brother. So she talks about those things. Regina King is talking about the suicide of her son. You know, people are actually being open about their issues. Jennifer Lewis and her bipolar disorder, she talks about that. You know, people are having the conversations and they're making it less uncomfortable and normalizing it, which is good, so people don't have to suffer in silence. So, you know, social media, like, yeah, social media gave everybody a voice. And I think you still have some people who would much rather suffer in silence than to actually speak up and say, you know, what's going on. And I think a lot of that has to do with, you know, feeling judged. You don't want anybody to ask you those questions. Why didn't you leave? You know, what made you stay? Why did you not pay attention to the red flags? And anybody who's in a helping position would never ask you those things.
Wow. Anyone who's in a helping position would never ask you those things because they're really accusatory questions.
Mm-hmm. And if you do ask, you
Mm-hmm.
know, even if you do ask, there's a way to ask, you know, why did you stay that doesn't feel like you're stupid for staying. You know, there's a way to ask. And like I said, a trained mouth is going to be able to communicate that. Like that's not something you could go look for from your friends or your cousins, you know, because they say, are you stupid? Why are you even staying? You know, and innocently, you don't realize how bad you make somebody feel. But when you go to speak to somebody professionally, you know, our questions are more aligned with, are you prepared to leave? What would it take for you to leave? Or are you just ready for counseling services to process it? What do we have to do to get you to the point where you're comfortable with going out here on your own? Are you at the point now where you have to plan your escape? You know, like it's questions that we ask to figure out where a person is in their process.
So, well, that begs the question, and I've seen people asking this in the comments, like with the Diddy video. Clearly, tons of people knew that this was going on. This went on for a long time, and a lot of people knew. So, we have women who are essentially trapped in these domestic violence situations, and then we asked why they didn't leave. They were surrounded by people who knew what was going on and enabled the assailant instead of trying to offer them help. Does that cause an embedded sense of helplessness?
Of course. But I think when it comes down to celebrities and me, if you know, Chris Brown, for example, me dating Chris Brown, and I'm a choreographer, and I've danced in his videos, and because I danced in his videos, I danced in Diddy's videos, and because I danced in Diddy's videos, Usher hired me, and I've built my career based on Chris Brown. Am I really gonna destroy my career by letting the world know what he has done to me, and I am still getting jobs based on
his name,
what I have done with him?
Wow.
So I think in terms of Hollywood, it makes it a little more difficult because I want to move beyond this and do other things. But if I blackball this man or woman, I may never get an opportunity again. So that's my livelihood going down the drain. Here, when you suffer in silence in a relationship, most of the time people don't find out until you're showing up like you can't cover the black eye this time because where he's hitting you, you can't cover it.
Yeah.
So, you've been able to wear long sleeves or, it's somewhere that's not noticeable, but now he's starting to tear your face up. So now you have to say something.
So Angela talked about how there are always some signs, and she mentioned some of them, such as, let me see your phone, or, just the, want to know where you are all the time, the controlling, the isolating. What are some of the other signs? Because often people think they aren't being abused if it's mental, emotional abuse, but that's all abuse, and it often escalates. So, what are all the signs, that we should look for?
So, even the asking about what you're wearing. Well, why did you wear that? That's totally inappropriate to wear, and all of the expletives that come out, like, along with that. You're dressed like a blah, blah, blah. And it's just shorts and a tank top, but you want to control what I wear so nobody else looks at me. Of course, the isolation, but that isolation sometimes may never lead to someone being hit. It's just that they want to have so much control over you to move you away from everybody else just to have you to themselves. And that's their own insecurity, but the way they address their insecurity is by making you miserable. So sometimes it never ever leads to actually laying a hand on you, but they've isolated you so much and used their control to make you feel guilty for so long, you end up being away from everybody and off to yourself until you finally find that same strength to walk away. Sometimes there are no indicators because a lot of times, all these new phrases, gaslighting and love bombing, and you will meet men who will love bomb you. They're consistent up front. They tell you how beautiful you are, and they bring you lunch, and they're bringing you flowers, and they're not pressing you to be intimate with you, and they're taking you places and showing you new things, doing all of the things. And then they flip. When they've gotten you hooked, and then they flip. And it's like, you're hoping for that same person to be who they are. And it's like that high. When people say, I've been searching for that same high, that first high for 30 years, they never get that same high. So I'm addicted to how you made me feel because I done already told you that the men that I've been with before have never treated me like that. They were mean to me. They didn't pour into me. And you came in and did all of these things. So now I'm stuck because I'm hoping you'll go back to that same person. And it just happened that I've hoped for the last 2 years that you would go back to being the same person because you do. When it wears off, you buy me gifts and you take me places and you treat me like I'm the most beautiful girl in the world. And then when you get angry, here we go again.
Wow.
So sometimes there are no indicators. Like Elder Town said, talking down to you. That emotional abuse. that emotional abuse, because it doesn't always lead to actually being hit. Sometimes it's just, you have beat me up mentally so bad I don't even know who I am anymore.
Yes. Why do we think that we're not being abused just because someone didn't put their hands on us? Why do we think that?
Because for history, we've done that. Our families have done that. You think about colorism in the Black family, how the great grandma or grandma or auntie favored the lighter children over the darker ones. And then soon as she get mad, you Black, this, that, and the other. And we've taken the abuse. So the words, that's not abuse. My family talked to me like that. Doesn't make it right. But it's not until someone has their awakening, their aha moment where they want to heal, or they do it to their child, and the response that they get, and they're like, okay, I need to fix this. And a lot of times you have to be self-aware. Do I like when this happens? Does that make me feel good when these things happen? We have to be the change that we want to see. And that comes with being aware that there's a problem there in the first place. And sometimes because we've experienced those behaviors for so long within our own families, because a man comes along and does it, this is my norm.
So I see Minister Rose put up here, when they change, I run out the door. So that's a perfectly logical solution. But what do we say to the women who have nowhere to run to, have no resources to take care of themselves, to even get away? What do we say to those who out of the door will mean out on the street?
They have to sneak. And these days, oftentimes when you go to the doctors now, the doctor's offices will ask, are you being abused at home? Do you feel safe at home? Those are the times to disclose what's going on, because your abuser can't come in the room with you. So if you need to speak up and get some help right then and there, that's the time to say it. But what I did ask one time, I had a young lady, a tech, ask me those questions. And I asked her, I said, if I answered yes to those, what would you have done? And she was stuck. And I said, well, why did you ask? Why did you ask? If you weren't equipped to help me, if I was in a crisis right now and I needed help, if you were not equipped to help me, why did you ask those questions?
Wow.
And I know that she was probably like, this lady is crazy. But realistically, don't ask me. Don't ask me. If you can't help me, why are you asking me? So it's like now they're, when you go to work, 211 to call and get your resources. Like getting away from domestic violence is very, very strategic. You have to be ready. But you would be surprised how many women are housed at the House of Ruth and call their abusers from there and say exactly where they are.
Wow. Because
they're not ready yet. They may have been tired of being beaten at that moment, but they weren't fully withdrawn from that relationship. So they get there and they call and disclose where they are, and then they put everybody else who's there at risk. So they keep police on the grounds, over there, but they put everybody at risk because they've actually had abusers come on the grounds.
Wow.
Because there are women there who are literally in the fight of their life. They are looking to get out of Maryland because they know if that man gets a hold of them, they're going to kill him.
So, okay. If we're a village, we are one another's sisters. Okay. We are Cassie's best friend. She sneaks to her cell phone while Diddy's asleep and calls and says, I'm in trouble. I need help. I need to get away from here. What do we do for our girlfriend?
That's a tricky one. Because you have to get through a whole lot of people to get to her, to get her away from him. There's going to be security everywhere. So it has to be played out a little differently with celebrities, because you can't just walk up on them. It's virtually impossible. So it's like she would have to potentially fake something where, oh, there's an emergency with my friend now. You call and say that, hey, I'll call you in the morning, fake an emergency, tell you that I need you here so he can put you on a plane so you can come here. I'll say somebody died. Like whatever's necessary, I have to do to get you away from the situation. Because realistically, I'm certain at a moment there are certain things that tug at people, when they come out of evil mode, and you can kind of break away from them for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But unassuming, and it has to be once it dies down. Like if I try to do it, you beat me the day before, and then I try to say somebody died, that's not obvious. I mean, that's going to be obvious.
Yeah.
So I have to kind of plan it. Like there's a lot of heavy planning to get away from an abuser. I mean, and even still, you think, restraining orders and final orders and all of those things, and women are still being killed with those restraining orders. That young lady in Parkville, that guy chased her around the parking lot, and she said, "I'm going to call the police," and he said he didn't care. In 2021, there were 37 homicides that were related to domestic violence, and 13 were in Baltimore City.
Yeah, I've discovered, since I've been doing my work, talking about doing ministry for, populations that people don't want to touch, and these issues nobody wants to deal with. So since I've been working with the bereaved moms, I've even encountered moms whose children were killed by a domestic partner. And the legal system didn't work out for them. All of the protections that were supposed to be in place didn't work out for them. And so it does make one afraid to get out of a situation if they don't feel that on the other side of this, that they're going to be safe.
Correct.
So that was why I asked that question, because then it becomes, all right, am I willing to let my girlfriend Cassie come stay with me, knowing that now this is going to come to my door?
And that restraining order and protective order, that paper is not a deterrent for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because there's nobody tracking you. It would be a difference if when people got those put in place, they were put on GPS. So then there's somebody monitoring, saying, hey, he's at the location where he's not supposed to be. They have this woman's locations, and they know, all right, these are the locations he shouldn't be, and he's there. They're not being tracked. I can go where I want to go. Yeah. And, by the time I kill you and going about my business, I can kill myself. And then I have accomplished my goal. I already didn't feel like my life was valuable. So here it is, the damage is done.
Because those don't really take into consideration the mental state of the abuser, because they really only work if the abuser cares about being caught or getting in trouble or intends to live long enough for something to happen.
Let me just tell you about peace order. So, caring for the child that I'm caring for, a woman attempted to come and attack him. I got a peace order. The initial judge granted it immediately. She saw the video footage. She granted it immediately. The second judge wouldn't even look at it. And she told me, I feel like she won't do this again. Oh, you feel like. So that's how the system fails people, because here it is. It was a week. In a matter of a week, you felt like she wouldn't do something again. Now, granted, nothing happened, but suppose you did that, you amended the order, it was done, over, terminated, and the very next day something happened. So I have to go by what you feel, and this child has to go by what you feel, because you decided that it wasn't going to happen again.
Wow.
So in an instant, the system doesn't, and I had enough footage to, if I had the same judge, it would have been extended. There wouldn't have been a question about it. But because this lady had a feeling, she didn't extend it.
Wow. And put him at risk.
Correct.
Wow. So, I mean, that could lead us down a whole nother road of questions that I don't want to go on to, because it's off. But that begs the question as to, was that because it was a female that you were getting the peace order against. And so we know that men are also being abused by women. Children are being abused by women as well. And
Absolutely.
so it's probably even harder for them to get protection if it's a woman, because a judge is going to sit there and say, oh, she's learned her lesson, she's not going to do that again. Yeah. Wow.
So those systems sometimes, aren't necessarily the safest. So you have to think those things all the way through from plan A to Z about how you're going to get out.
Wow. So what kind of support is out there to help women do this?
So like I said, your doctor's offices, 988, crisis response lines, 211 has the most resources. You can call them for a resource about anything, shelter care. It's the gamut. It's in 211. That's where all of the resources are. Going into your local emergency departments. Like Mercy is one for sure, because they're connected to, like, they are the hospital that performs like the rape assessments and stuff like that. So they are abundant in resources in terms of abuse. You just have to call. You have to call and, make that first step, because the resources aren't, you're not going to go out there and see it because it's in secret. So that those kind of resources, you're not just going to see. You have to actually make those phone calls. The mental health ones are up everywhere. You see billboards and that sort of thing. But when it comes down to domestic violence, it's kind of quiet because they don't want it to be imposed on body abusers.
Right. So they keep it quiet so that the users aren't aware of what the resources are or where they are.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. So I have more questions than I have time. We only have 6 minutes. I think that we have to talk a little bit more about this this emotional and verbal abuse, because what happened to Jasmine Crockett was abuse.
Yep.
The mentioning of perhaps you couldn't see or something through the eyelashes, that was verbal abuse. And the men who were leading that session were going to ignore it. Then you had AOC speak up and say something. And by that time, Jasmine had her alliteration ready with her BBBBBs. And we're laughing at how triumphantly she came back, and returned bigger than tick for tack, and put the abuser in her place. But what we saw was, not only is the Black woman still being abused by men, but we are abused by white women in the highest rooms in our nation. And the woman is allowed to sit there and say, and I'm not apologizing. I'm not apologizing. And nothing happens to her. We have a serious problem with how people are being allowed to disrespect us, which is why I asked the question about the rapper up there, doing the twerk and stuff. And I did look her up, and that seems to be all she does. Yeah. So the license to disrespect us, it seems to be based on a small percentage of us who are living like that. That is not the majority of us. I don't think that we need to be covered from, chin to toes all day in order to be respected, in order to be acknowledged as, beautiful women. This is a problem. It's a big problem. I'm glad that Jasmine responded in such a classy and non explicative manner, because there were other B's she could have added to that, and she didn't.
Correct.
But it kind of makes you feel like, wow, when you look at what Wilkerson in her book Caste, when she talked about the unspoken caste system in our nation, the Black woman really is at the bottom of the barrel, even though we are in the second highest seat in the country. And they refuse to acknowledge that the real issue isn't so much Biden's age, because Trump is almost as old as he is. The real issue is that Biden is so old that in 4 years, the likelihood that we will have transitioned to a Black female president is scaring the bejeebies out of so many people.
And see,
And
that's the difference
go ahead.
in abuse, because what we're dealing with in those rooms
Mm-hmm.
is microaggressions and abuse based off of 400 years ago.
Yeah.
Who we were then. How dare you think that you have a place at this table now? You are still who your ancestors were.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we come up against a different kind of beast when we're in those rooms, because it's, even if you try to prove yourself, you'll still never be good enough, only because of what you look like. And it's
Mm-hmm.
proven more graduates come out of HBCUs and are successful than any other universities. You know, we are out here dominating, like we're doing it, Black women in particular. But because of what our skin looks like, we don't deserve to be in the room, and we are more than deserve to be in any room and at any table.
Because we built this country.
That part.
Wow. Part. Wow. Wow. So, well, we're out of time. Give us a final word for anybody who is currently in a domestic situation, any kind of abusive situation, might be a young person. What do we have to offer them before we log off tonight?
Young people, see your school counselors, your school social workers, school psychologists. If you're in one of those situations at school, that's where all of your help is going to be, at school. You can get that support there. Adults, 988 is not just for suicide. It is a resource line. You can call, you can vent, you can talk. And 988 here is connected to Baltimore Crisis Response. So you can get anything you need from calling 988. And like I said, 211. Even if you have to fake an infection, a pain of some sort, use your insurance, go to the emergency room. There's always police there. There's always going to be staff there to kind of help you facilitate that movement. Those are, your options. And then if you, have a therapist, disclose to your therapist. It is their responsibility to ensure that you are out of danger. We have a duty to warn. We have a duty to protect. So if you aren't in therapy and you want to go that route, get in therapy. It's easy. All insurances provide therapy. Maryland Medicaid is free. So, those are all of your options.
Thank you so much, Tracy. And we want to thank Angela, who had to get off to get to another meeting, but we've already decided we are going to do another session in person. We're going to sit on the sofa and just have some good talk, because there's so much more that needed to be said in this topic. And there are probably women who will be in the room who have questions, or just may need to get some help. And so we want to give you an opportunity before we log off tonight to sow seed to the NBBC. You can go to our website, the NBBC.org. We are Cash App $, the NBBC. And we want to invite you to Women's Day on Sunday on campus at noon. online at 9. Prayerfully, we will have worked out our website issues, and we will be on the NBBC Baltimore at 9. If not, you can come right here to Lisa Weah, and you will see our broadcast at 9 a.m. on Sunday. Again, our guest preachers are my good friends and brothers, Pastor Brent Brown at 9 a.m., and then Pastor Antonio Matthews will be with us from the Real Church out in Denver. Although many remember him from when he was here on the East Coast, he'll be with us at noon. I believe it's going to be an incredible impartation for our women. We've had an incredible Women's Month. We're going to be on campus Friday night for the ladies' night out. I cannot wait. I am ready to be with my sisters. We've had an incredible season. Shout out to Sister Kalita and to Sister Tyra, Sister Glenice, Sister Tina, to Deacon Keisha, leading our women in such excellence. And the men have next. I've already seen their plans, and they actually are planning to bring it in June. So we're excited about all that's going on in and through the ministry of the New Bethlehem Baptist Church. We pray you all have a blessed and safe remainder of your day. Ladies, we love you. Big Wakanda hug. And we're signing off. Good night, everybody.
Good night.